Welcome to PuckTalkCS 120. We are back after a long summer vacation.
Yes, it feels good to be back in the studios. We got plenty to talk to. We got some fan questions. We got some callers. So we'll see what we can address here. So let's talk puck.
Well, today's episode will be all about the New Jersey Devils. We'll be breaking them down. But before we get to that call, we will be talking about how Mike Fisher has retired. The Predators just went to the Stanley Cup final. He was the captain of that team, and he is retired after 17 seasons of play. What does that mean for Nashville?
Well, of course, it's another loss since they lost Neal to the Vegas Golden Knights in the draft.
We talked about that, by the way.
We did talk about that. But Fisher had an outstanding season. He spent the first 11 and a half seasons with the Senators before he was dealt to Nashville. So his impact is not really with the Predators, more with the Senators. But, it's a big loss for the Predators is now they have to fill Neal's spot and they have to fill Fisher's spot. So Predators could see a little drop in the power rankings here in this upcoming season. But we will talk more when we discuss each team and what moves they made more when the preseason comes. But great season for Fisher,
Yeah, coming up, we'll be talking about what we have planned so far. I wrote a preview for the San Jose Sharks because I felt there wasn't really an episode necessary for them. Not a lot has changed with San Jose over the past few seasons, but we really want to talk about, before we get to some of those other teams or the teams that aren't as exciting, we want to talk about the Oilers and the Rangers as well. We're talking about the Devils. So we're trying to pull in some special guests here.
Mm-hmm.
We set up a Skype. We won't tell you the name yet because we haven't done a call. So we really want to start reaching out and getting some callers. And we've been talking about this since episode 1, so it's exciting to finally complete it. But a lot of news has been flying around. The summer's starting to calm down. We want to talk about free agency a little bit later before the preseason because there's a lot to cover this free agency summer in 2017.
I want to mention that Fisher never won a Stanley Cup. He's been to a couple of finals with the Senators and the Predators, but he never won a Stanley Cup playoff.
Yeah, he never won Destination Silver. That's what most people call it. And it's a shame because he came so close this season.
He did in his final season, but he never won. But still, he had a great career.
And he ended on 299 goals, so he didn't reach 300. I'm surprised. If that was me, I have conclusion problems, so I would definitely want to finish that out. But
yeah, he finished under. I think he needed a couple more games to hit, I think, 1,100 games in his NHL career. But again, it's not a big problem. So we're back. PuckTalkCS is back. Expect episodes weekly. We're going to get to the point where it's going to start picking up and they're going to come out daily. As the pre comes to a start, we will be talking about all of that weekly as of now. But we're back and we'll be taking fan questions at our email. That'll be in the link, as always, below. So we'll see.
Yeah, pucktalkcs@gmail.com. You can ask questions there. Like we said, we're looking for people to call in. So we'll expect more articles, expect more episodes. Steve is on vacation next week, but Mike can fill in for Steve at any time. We already have some special guests planned, and we're excited to have more roundtable discussions. But, of course, go to our Twitter as well because content's going up there. Episode notifications and everything like that. If you subscribe, you'll be able to get that too.
I guess this is the start of season 3.
Yeah, I mean, I would officially start it now too, especially having our first call-in guest. That's a good way to start it. It's still the summer, but this season we have the Olympics as well, which will be exciting. That'll be in about February. The NHL season, of course, in preseason. We don't have the World Cup of Hockey though, like we did last season. So it should be an exciting season ahead.
Of course.
We invite Mr. John Fisher, editor of SB Nation's All About the Jersey Hockey blog, our first special guest onto our show. Welcome, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. But you can just call me John.
Alrighty. So,
all right, welcome, John. I'm Steven.
I'm Chives. And we're so excited because we are able to talk hockey with someone other than Steve. myself or our typical special guest Mike, and it's very exciting because you're almost an insider for the Devils, and you have a lot of knowledge about this specific team, which will help us break them down for our viewers.
Well, thank you for having me on. I don't know if I'd call myself an insider, but I'd like to think I know something about the Devils, and I'd like to share it.
Oh, well, we are very excited for your thoughts. So let's begin. We have some questions for our special guest today. Now, our first number one question is, what does the accusation of Niko Hischier mean for the Devils in your eyes?
Well, Niko is definitely a historic draft pick. He's the first ever New Jersey Devils first overall draft pick. They've never drafted first overall in New Jersey. You'd have to go back to the late 1970s when they were in Colorado for the last first overall pick. So Mr. Hischier is definitely historic in that sense. So he's the only number one guy, and therefore the expectations are fairly high. Whenever you're drafted first, all the expectation is that you're the best or one of the best players in that draft class. So the expectations are very high in terms of what he can do in his career for New Jersey. That being said, what does he do for the Devils today? Well, he is hopefully an NHL player right out of the box, so to speak. Most 18-year-olds are not NHL players. They're not ready. They need to go back to juniors, go to college, go play in Europe, spend a season somewhere else. And usually they're not really ready until they're 20, 21, 22, and so forth. But Niko has the talent. He has the skill set. He's got the offensive skill set that the Devils sorely have lacked in their lineup. So I don't want to say he's going to come in and be an all-star right away, but the expectation is that in a couple seasons, he really should be one of the Devils' top forwards. And it's entirely possible he could, get big minutes right away in New Jersey. I fully expect him to make New Jersey in training camp. I would prefer to put him on a third line where he can be sheltered a little bit more, let him get acclimated to the NHL game coming out of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League and be able to, be successful against lesser competition before trying him up against anything higher. But what does he do? Again, he provides a lot of excitement and a lot of hope too. A lot of optimism to say that the Devils are going in the right direction. So, provided Niko is truly a successful draft pick, and he meets the expectations that comes with being a number one overall draft pick, then, he will provide a lot to New Jersey in coming years.
And many teams really look for that top center, that future top center. We look at players like Ryan Johansson, who was just signed to an 8-year contract extension. And many teams are in the search of a top-line center like a Taves or a Crosby. And that's a big thing in the league right now where I've noticed that many teams are looking for that number one center. So another question for especially with the Hischier conversation going right now, were you pulling for Patrick or Hischier? They both have different skill sets, and they're different players overall. So what do you find you were looking for? Were you looking for a player of Nolan Patrick or Hischier? Of course, both would be future top-line centers and hopefully would blossom as NHL All-Stars. But were you pulling for any specific player?
Well, we've had this conversation, a debate, if you will, on All About the Jersey among the writers, and I was on Team Niko, so to speak. Ultimately, if you asked me this question, say back in January, I probably would have said Nolan Patrick because he was the consensus number one throughout the entire season. But as the season went on, we've learned a couple things. One, Nolan Patrick had a significant injury history. We've learned back at the Combine that he actually had 2 sports hernias. He didn't just have one. And he had some other injuries that he was playing through. You could argue that what you saw at Patrick from what little he did play last season, it's real impressive because if he can get healthy, you got a real talented player. You've got the quote-unquote jack of all trades in Patrick. Basically think of a Jonathan Taves-like player. That being said, though, if you're picking number one overall especially, you don't want a guy where you have to sit there and go, I don't know if he's going to play 40 games this season. I don't know how his hernia is going to affect him as he gets older. Normally when you're 18, you already have a number of muscle-related injuries like that. It's pretty bad. It would have been better if he just broke his neck because necks heal. Bones heal pretty easily.
Oh, yeah.
Muscles, not so much. And, the only way it could have been worse for Nolan Patrick is if he had, like, an ACL tear instead of a sports hernia, because, those are always a big deal. So, as the season went on, it was pretty clear that Hischier was just dominating the queue. He was awarded the best prospect out of the queue by the league. It's an award they give. His numbers jumped off the page. He averaged close to 4 shots per game. Like, he had the offensive skill set, both from a shooting and a passing perspective, that the Devils just don't really have outside of Taylor Hall. And, I like Michael McLeod. I like John Quenneville. There are a number of other prospects I do like out of them, but Hischier, stands out among them. So,
yeah. So
as the draft came on, I was basically hoping for Hischier. And, ultimately I landed, I got what I wanted, and so I was very happy.
Yes, well, you know what? Since we brought up players like Quenneville, McLeod, what are some of the what's the dirt on some of these players out of training camp and the prospect camps that they've been running in New Jersey? Because I don't know a lot about these prospects. Right now, the big headline name in the league has been Kailer Yamamoto. You typically hear about the big names like Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid, but the Devils have a pool of prospects that they can choose from. So what other prospects really stand out to you?
Okay, well, allow me first to plug something that's going on at All About the Jersey right now. We're actually running our community top 25 under 25 list, where the Devils have 45 players in their system under the age of 25, and we asked anybody, this could be you, to go fill out a survey and basically just rank them however you'd like. So you can sit there and say, okay, I want Hischier number 1 and Severson number 2, and so on and so forth, all the way down the list. And this allows us to get us a good idea of what the community at large thinks who the best prospects are, who are the interesting guys, and who's not. To answer your question, though, more specifically, guys like Quenneville and McLeod are definitely closer to being NHL ready than not. Quenneville was the top scorer in Albany in the AHL last year. He got a couple games last season with the New Jersey team. He's pretty much a good offensive player. He doesn't do a whole lot that really stands out per se, but he seems to get things done fairly well, and that's all. And if you can do well, you will get a chance at the NHL. So I think he'll get a good look in this year's training camp with the pro team this September. Michael McLeod is another interesting guy. He was a good guy out of Mississauga of the OHL, and then last season he just blew up. Like he just a star on the Steelheads. He was a scoring machine. He's very fast, very good hands. It's going to be a real question whether or not the New Jersey Devils want to keep him here in New Jersey, or whether or not they want to send him back to Mississauga for another year. I mean, it's one of those. It's like a Pavel Zacha situation where, like last season, it was clear that Zacha was kind of too good for the OHL. There wasn't a whole lot for him to learn there. So the Devils just said, "All right, we'll burn your ELC now. You'll play your 19-year-old season with New Jersey. You'll take your lumps now and hope that you can learn from that." And it seems that Zacha will grow from that. So they may do the same with McLeod this year. Another prospect I think you should be aware of is Blake Spears. He made the team out of camp last year. He actually played 3 games with New Jersey before going back to Sault Ste. Marie with the Greyhounds in the OHL. He was projected to be like one of the top players of the OHL last season. Unfortunately, injuries did him in, but injuries don't take away from the skill set. He's a very quick, very good winger, good mind, good hands. I think he's going to get a real long look in camp again, and it wouldn't surprise me if he makes the team out of New Jersey instead of going to Binghamton. So those are 3 prospects I would, if you're looking at the Devils with the start in this coming season, those are 3 Devils I would implore you to get a little more familiar with, because I think you're going to see those names in New Jersey a lot sooner than later.
Alrighty, we'll put an asterisk next to those names, especially going forward in the season, looking at their development. Now on a more the NHL level for the New Jersey Devils, they've acquired Marcus Johansson, a good 20-goal depth center from the Washington Capitals, and Brian Boyle from basically across the river. He is a great penalty killer, big body, can add that depth scoring as well. So how much do they improve the Devils' all-around play?
Well, the biggest problem with the Devils, there are basically 3 main problems with the Devils based on last season. Their defense just isn't talented enough. Their depth at forward was problematic. You had a lot of bodies rotated around with nobody really playing particularly well. Vernon Fiddler definitely was not a good veteran to plug in the fourth line role, to take defensive zone faceoffs, to take penalty killing minutes. He was just overwhelmed a lot. And honestly, the top six for New Jersey at forward, they really only had four guys that are worth being in the top six. So these don't help the Devils' defensive problems, but they definitely address the other two. Brian Boyle, he's younger than Fiddler. He's 32. He comes from Tampa Bay and Toronto from last season. He was very good in Tampa Bay, a good possession center, very good at the draw, big body, definitely can play physical if necessary without getting stupid. And, again, he's a guy that I can see for solidifying the bottom six role, even if he's just a fourth liner. And normally you don't want to pay your fourth line centers $2 million per year or around there. But the fact of the matter is that he addresses a need on the team. So this way, when the fourth line does come out or the third line comes out, they could stick Boyle in there, and they're not necessarily getting every other shift last season. It's not an accident that the bad teams, they tend to have pretty good guys on their fourth line is just, scrubs, and therefore they get scrubbed. So Boyle will address that piece. Johansson gives the Devils a fifth top six forward. Now, you may notice I said fifth. The Devils don't have six top six forwards yet.
Yes.
But Johansson is versatile. He definitely comes from Washington, where he was very productive. I think over the years he's shown that he's not just a guy that needs to play with the top tier players in Washington to be successful. He's done it with and without Backstrom and Ovechkin, and he's very productive, very good possession game. He can play defense, and just as importantly, he can play either wing or center. I honestly think he's going to be used as a winger. I think he's perfect as a replacement for Mike Camilleri, who was bought out and now is a Los Angeles King, if I recall correctly. But the fact of the matter is that, the Devils now have options, so they can run a top line of Hall, Zajac, and Palmieri again, and then your second line isn't just Henrique and a bunch of guys. It's Henrique, Johansson, and whoever can take that sixth spot, whether that's Heischer, whether that's McLeod, whether that's Miles Wood, whether that's a veteran or a traded player that they're going to get. The Devils are closer to having, a good lineup on paper at forward, and that's a good thing. The defense still needs work, but they're better up front.
Oh, well, I feel that Henrique, great 20-goal scorer. They finally acquired Hall, seems to be the headline piece over the last two seasons. His acquisition was huge for the franchise. It's been a long time since they've had a scorer like Taylor Hall that, puck and net equals win, so to speak. So for Taylor Hall, I feel that's his role. What is Kyle Palmieri's role going to be with these additions? Do you still feel he would be a top-line forward? Would he be one of those top six forwards?
Well, as I just mentioned, yeah, he is one of the top six forwards.
Yeah.
He kind of has to be. There really isn't anybody else who could play right wing. I mean, the team. You look at the team on paper; it has Palmieri, and I guess you could switch Johansson to right wing, even though he's a natural left winger. But after that, it's Stefan Nason and a bunch of prospects. I mean, Palmieri by default has to play in that role, but his role is still going to stay the same. He's very much a shooter. He's not the guy, he's not a terrible passer, and he's not terrible on defense, but his main role on the team is you give him the puck, a little space, he will rip a wrist shot that's just going to, make the goalie sweat. I just recently looked at the 26 goals he scored last season, and it's actually kind of amazing in that the season prior he scored 30. He had 220-something shots. It looked like, that was his first season with New Jersey. It was looking like he was going to be, a great scorer. And last season, he started off the first 2 months of the season, he only had 3 goals total. And he ended the season with only 1 goal in the last 11 games of the season. So he had some serious droughts. And yet, at the end of the day, even with 30 fewer shots, he still had 26 goals. He was still pretty close to matching what he did in his first season goal-wise. If the team was better and he didn't have some bad puck luck and took some more shots, he could have had 30 last season. So it's entirely possible that with this new season coming up, a longer tenure with Hall and Zajac, in my opinion, I think should be the way to at least start next season. And then this way, as long as he's able to shoot more, and he can shoot pretty well at the net, in front of the net. He can deflect pucks in. He can jam in rebounds. He can score from the left and the right from the inside half of the circle. This is a guy that you give him the puck and you give him opportunity. He's going to reward you. I think he can get 30 next season. So I think that role is going to stay the same for a couple more seasons.
I like that outlook, and a very interesting outlook, because the Devils, like we stated, the past 5 seasons, I would say, since Kovalchuk left, they haven't really had that top goal scorer or sniper with that release of the players of the likes of Hall and Palmieri. And chemistry is always something you want to build between players like that. Steve has a question.
I do. I want to talk about Cory Schneider. Last year, he struggled through the worst of his 4 seasons with the Devils. He went 20-27. He had a low save percentage. He didn't get too much help with the defense, but he gave up a lot of rebounds. And I know that he has 5 seasons remaining on a 7-year deal. So are they going to stick with Schneider going forward in the upcoming years? So what's the plan with him?
Well, they're definitely going to stick with him. I mean, they did sign him to a big contract. I mean, I think it'd be kind of silly to say you had one bad year on a really bad hockey team that was clearly not going to make the playoffs. I think it would just be, you might as well just tell the rest of the league, hey, we're kind of stupid here in New Jersey. You don't want to do that. But more seriously, I forget his name. I want to say it was Andrew Kierson, who does Original Six Analytics on Twitter, on his website. He recently did a box plot analysis of all the top goaltenders in the league. And he listed that Schneider's season last year is an outlier. And for those of you who don't know what an outlier is, it means that he was statistically so far off the norm that, it defied expectations. And that can be both a good thing or a bad thing. And last year it was obviously a bad thing. And that speaks to how high level of a goaltender Schneider was for New Jersey, and even in the few years and the few games he played with Vancouver prior to coming to New Jersey. I think it's important to look at a breakdown of the situations of those save percentages. So a good, because I'm going to blow your minds here. His even strength save percentage in New Jersey last season was not his worst even strength save percentage in his 4 years in New Jersey. His worst was actually in his first year. But in that first year, he was boosted by some amazing save percentages on the penalty kill and on the power play with shorthanded goals. So those boosted his overall save percentage, despite a less than great even strength save percentage. This past season was the exact opposite. The even strength save percentage was around league average, not too bad. Around league average is okay. It's 92%. That's still really good. But the penalty kill and the shorthanded goals were just bad, and it's really, I don't want to say totally lucky, because you still got to make the saves, you got to make the plays as necessary. But special teams are so volatile from season to season that you can't just look at a penalty kill save percentage of 85% last year and then say, well, that means Schneider's going to be 85% next season. It's not going to work that way. He can do the exact same things, but because the puck didn't go the right way, or the puck goes the right way, depending on your perspective, he suddenly gets to be an 90% save percentage guy on the PK. Looks like one of the best goaltenders in the league. I mean, that's just how that's where we are with goalie stats. We're a lot of it is focused on 5-on-5 and even strength situations, because the special is just so volatile that it could really drive outliers or prevent them from happening. So I'm not really concerned about Schneider. I think he really had a couple bad months last year. December was awful for him. November wasn't that good for him either. But honestly, this is the guy you roll with. This is the guy that has more than proven over the last 4 years that if you're going to drag this team to overachieve like you did 2 seasons ago, it's going to come from Schneider playing very well. And I honestly would bet on Schneider playing well again, rather than having another out of the norm bad season like last one.
Like a fluke season, yeah. So he needs a bounce back, and he doesn't have a great defense in front of him. So is there a solution the Devils are currently looking for right now that can solve defensive play? Not the Keith Yandles. You don't really need an offensive defenseman right now. That's not what's needed.
No. They need an offensive defenseman. That's actually one of the biggest problems on their defense.
You would say that they do. So what is the defense shaping up like right now? There haven't been a lot of moves defensively.
No, and actually one of the bigger moves I'm surprised they didn't make was change their coaching. One of the things we're learning with all the hockey analytics and the growth of stats for the past decade or so is that coaching really matters. Having a coach, just as an example for Devils fans, Larry Robinson was an excellent coach. He made careers out of Mike Motto and Johnny Oduya, guys that in other organizations with other coaches, they've not been successful. And you see it with other teams as well. Like the New York Rangers, having a good coach can turn Brady Skay, for example, into a guy that actually looks like he's a quality NHL defenseman. Stick him in an organization where the coaching is not as good or the player's not a good fit, and Brady Skay could just be like a lifer in the AHL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe that's an extreme example, but the point I'm trying to make here is that coaching makes a big difference with respect to how you play defensively. And say what you want about Jacques Lemaire and Larry Robinson and Pat Burns and all the best Devils that were derided with being defensively oriented, but they all made sure that the forwards helped out on defense. So even if your defensemen on paper weren't that great, like you had the Karol Ratchenuks and the Andre Zuzins and other guys like that, you had forwards coming back to help out a lot. And one of the biggest problems on the Devils' defense last year is the fact that the wingers, especially guys like Miles Wood, weren't good defensively. They're not helping out. So you already have defensemen that are overwhelmed. And then you got forwards in there like Wood, Devontae Smith-Pelly, Jakob Josefsson to a degree, even though he's kind of defensive-minded, just not being helpful in their own end. So it just makes a problem already worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I said that about the offensive defenseman, I apologize for interrupting, but one of the biggest problems with the Devils' defense is that they don't really have anybody to move the puck effectively. Damon Severson is the best at it, and he's really talented. But, a lot of times there are long passes, and long passes lead to icings, offside plays, and other things that just go wrong. And that's partially due to coaching. The coaches need to tell the forwards, hey, stop being 40 feet away. You got to come in closer to give your defenseman a chance to make a pass. And alternatively, they got to look at the defenseman and go, okay, Andy Green is getting older. He's not as good as he once was. And Ben Lovejoy handles the puck like it's a grenade. Maybe we can't have this as a top pairing for 3 months.
Yeah.
Guess what? It didn't work. And ironically, what we're learning more with analytics is that the best defense is honestly a good offense.
Mm-hmm.
You'd rather have a Keith Yandel. Maybe Keith Yandel makes a turnover, a goal, and you're mad about it for 4 months, but he's contributing 10 goals.
Mm-hmm.
You take the good, if he gives
take the good with the bad, yeah.
Effectively, and that's what Severson can do. So even if Severson is prone to more turnovers and icings and stuff like that, the fact of the matter is that he's able to make plays that can result in positive impacts, offensive shifts, shots on net, goals if necessary. Whereas a Ben Lovejoy, who is quote-unquote reliable in his own end, he's never going to do that because every time he touches the puck, more often than not, he's just chipping it out of the zone. It's going to be collected by the other team, and what a surprise. Lovejoy's back to playing defense again. So I was really hopeful that the Devils would make Kevin Shattenkirk an offer he couldn't refuse.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the Brinks truck backed up to his house to say, yeah, I know that you love the New York Rangers. He's your hometown team. But is your hometown love worth more than, say 7 years at $42 million?
Mm-hmm.
Give him the offer. That's really hard to refuse because Kevin Shattenkirk on this Devils team would have really helped out a lot of the issues on defense.
Yes.
It would have given him another offensive player, would have given him a guy who could actually pass the puck effectively. And like Severson, you could argue that he's definitely not your physical, Scott Stevens style, I'm going to hang and bang with you and then make a killer pass to beat you. He's not one of those Hall of Fame defensemen. Fine. He's only the type of defenseman that the team really hasn't had since the halcyon days of Brian Rafalski. Severson is really good, but, Shattenkirk would have been on the Rafalski level.
Of course, I would say
Rafalski was good.
Yeah, Severson, I wouldn't say is the franchise labeled defenseman on the New Jersey Devils. I really thought Shattenkirk would have been a Devil by the time the season rolled around. It didn't work out that way. Maybe the Devils, like you said, didn't make the offer he couldn't refuse. And but I think that the Devils are moving forward. Do you believe that they've taken the right steps to go on maybe a wild card path or a potential playoff team this season?
I don't think this season is going to be the one that they're going to make. They should push for the playoffs. Like the Devils, I like what the Devils have done for the most part. Not getting help on defense, I think, is a big loss. Like, yeah, you didn't get Shattenkirk, but you're not going to try for Cody Franson at least. Like, At least get a guy on defense or change your assistant coach on defense. Because what was happening last season just wasn't working. You can't roll with that again and hope for better results. That being said, though, the division itself is very strong. It's a very tough division.
Yes.
Like Carolina finally has a goaltender, and I think don't be surprised if Carolina's a playoff team.
I agree.
Honestly, they've had a strong possession team, They have great defensemen. They have good forwards. They have a good coach. They have a very good coach in Kirk Muller. They just were done in by goaltending. So now they have Scott Darling. So, you add Carolina to a division that already sent Washington, Pittsburgh, Columbus, the Rangers to the playoffs last season. And mind you, the Islanders and the Flyers, didn't miss by a whole lot. I think the Islanders were late. They tried to sneak in. They were basically too little too late. But the fact of the matter is that that's a tough division. So even though I think the Devils may be a better team than what they were last season, and personally I really hope they are, because last season got depressing at points. It was just hard to realize I paid money to go see this team play. But the fact of the matter is that the division is so tough that I don't think it's feasible, short of like all the stars aligning, to really push for the playoffs. I think they should take. I think next season should be the push. I think, I don't want to sit here and say you have to wait for everybody to be bad in the division, because that's probably not going to happen. Like, Washington is a fairly smart team. Pittsburgh, they just won 2 straight Stanley Cups and they have like 3 All-Stars on their team. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to,
waltz into the playoffs. Yeah.
You can't just wait. There's a saying in the military: you can't just wait for Camp Cupcake to watch it. You want chocolate cake, you want the cupcake, but life ain't a cupcake. So, you're going to have to grind it out and, fight and battle and so forth to get to the playoffs if you're the Devils at some point. But from a standpoint of rebuilding and just personally as a fan, I think you could, if you're Shero, I think you can buy off on saying this season will be another lost season.
Mm-hmm.
But by next season, you're going to have McLeod should be fully ready to go. Heischer will be 1 year NHL pro. Zaka will be entering his 3rd year as an NHL player. You're entering the last year of the contracts of Johansson and Taylor Hall. Cory Schneider still going to be under 35. Like, it's pretty much if it's not going to happen next season, 2018, 2019, if you're not going to push for it then, I'm not sure when you really are going to try and go for it here. So that's what I think. So I don't think it's going to be this. I think it's going to be the following year.
Yeah, and they seem to be taking the healthy steps of really building up that prospect pool. And getting the young players involved, as well as adding some scoring depth, some center help. I would say the number one problem we've discussed that hasn't had a lot of help yet, which we already went over, was on defense. The goaltending, Cory Schneider, like you said, is looking for the bounce back. He shouldn't have one of those fluke seasons again. It could happen, but chances are it won't. And you're hoping that he doesn't, because it was a great season and he's one of the league's better goaltenders.
Yeah, that's not the size of it.
Thank you for joining our show, Mr. John Fisher. It was a pleasure to have you on and to discuss the New Jersey Devils with you and break them down. It's very exciting having our first special guest on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
It was so much fun. I had fun. I know Steve had fun. And we look forward to talking more as the season goes on about the New Jersey Devils.
Yep.
Alrighty. We're finished here with episode 120 of Puck Talk CS. It's all about the Jersey. Go check out SB Nation's New Jersey Devils blog. It's all about Jersey. We'll put a link below. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Maybe the Devils come out and they have a great season. Who knows? We'll have to evaluate it more as the season goes on, and we'll definitely see what happens in New Jersey. All right, and this wraps up episode 120 of Puck Talk CS. Please follow our Twitter, PuckTalkCS, which is always updated constantly. We got some more episodes coming out, now that we're back to start Season 3. So thanks for listening, everyone, and always remember, it's just the luck of the puck.